Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I'm your host, Amanda, and my amazing co-host is...
Hello, I'm Megan.
Hey. All right. So we are your source for messy, imperfect homeschool advice and community. Now, please do not get it confused. Messy and imperfect do not mean bad. The advice is solid. We've been at this a pretty long time. But we aren't influencers who show up here and tell you how easy it is to look like a cover model while also encouraging you to make cereal from scratch. What is with that trend? Hello. And, you're growing the wheat yourself and using all natural foods to change the colors of your homemade Cheerios. I can't even. All right. And then, yeah, whatever. We're not here. We're not creating our own curriculum for reusable, recycled materials.
No. And listen, if that's what your homeschool looks like, more power to you. You're totally welcome here. We're thrilled
Yeah.
you're here. Diversity is what makes our community so amazing. But we've met a bunch of listeners within our own online community and at homeschool events and conferences and through social media discussions. And we haven't come across not a single one of you whose day actually looks that way. And that's okay. You're not alone. Our days don't look like that either. So you're in good company if we do say so ourselves. In fact, I'm in year 11 of homeschooling and I have never met someone whose days look like that. So not only are you doing good, you're in the majority, even if the social media influencers don't make you feel like that's the case.
Yeah. Well, in fairness, I used to make my own baby food. Now I'm
I
the
did
queen
too.
of I will be there and I will be happy to bring a treat. Just know it's going to be store-bought because I don't have time to make anything. I can't even make my own food right now. I'm here, I made it, and I have a credit card that I know how to use at my neighborhood grocery store. So anyway, we are a unique space here in the homeschool world. We are more than willing to let you in and show you our good days and our bad ones and the messy as hell days. But beyond that, we are also a secular and progressive space. We are unfiltered, sometimes very unfiltered moms, the two of us, Megan and me, Amanda. But everyone is welcome in this space here at Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. All genders, all family makeups, all neurotypes, even all faiths, as long as you aren't here trying to convert me into anything, okay?
It's just so sad that everything you just said is revolutionary and makes us a unique space, though, because this is what the world looks like. It's different cultures, different languages, different everything. And diversity is a beautiful thing. We love it. However, we will share what we are not down with at all. And that is, we don't agree to disagree when it comes to human rights. We are a secular space, but we know we have listeners of different various faiths. All good. As long as you're not here perpetuating any of the love the sinner, hate the sin bullshit, or you're using #blessed in a Bible verse at the top of your Facebook profile, and then you call other human beings who, according to your faith, are children of God, illegals. It's most of the time not true. And the lines on the map are all made up and we stole this land. So, I can't take your Bible verse down if you're going to do that.
I mean, I could go on and on right now. This episode, it originally airs in June, which makes it Pride Month. And yeah, to prevent a major soapbox moment, let's just say we have a hard line in the sand. Actually, it's not even a line in the sand. We have spray painted across the concrete to all of that hateful garbage. There are plenty of homeschool groups that just love that shit. Go hang out there. If that is your jam, by all means, go. That is not what we are about here. There's the door. Feel free to let it hit you on the ass on the way out.
Who are you kidding, though? Those people are long gone because you said all genders a little while ago and they left way back when.
All right, well, I still hope the door hit them.
Oh my gosh. But I saw some post the other day in a Facebook group that I'm in for historical fiction book recommendations, and someone was asking about books for Stonewall or other Pride related topics. I've seen a bunch, so they're jumbled together in my head. But there was some idiot woman from Canada posting in the comments about how it's also Men's Health Month. I don't even know if that's a thing in the US or maybe it's a Canadian thing. I'm not sure. And she was giving all these stats about men unaliving themselves. And I literally commented and was like, thank goodness someone is here to stand up for the patriarchy because they are really going through it right now and they need all the allies they can get. You know, seriously, lady, how distorted is your worldview? But it was funny because there were other Canadians who were in the comments being like, "We don't claim her. Nope, 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 nope. We don't claim her. She's not one of us." Like she's on her own.
Right. I mean, that's just the thing. Pride Month matters for a whole lot of reasons. And I get really passionate about this stuff. I'm trying to avoid that soapbox moment. But look, support your local events, your local LGBTQIA plus community centers. Donate if you can. Orgs like Human Rights Campaign and the Trevor Project are doing incredibly important work. And please, 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 if you haven't done any unit studies or books or whatever with your kiddos around Pride, please take this as your gentle reminder that it's never too early.
Mhm. I'll toss out two extra organizations. One is the Mom Huggers. There's chapters in, I think, all 50 states. So I don't know if they've extended beyond moms, if other people are allowed to hug or be part of the group as well. But if you identify as a mom, you can go be a mom hugger and give out hugs at Pride events. And the other one is Stand in Pride, where you can like rent a family member basically for your wedding. If you don't have somebody to walk you down the aisle or somebody to do a particular thing in your wedding that you were really looking for a family member to do, there are people who will volunteer to be that family member for you for that day. So two other great organizations if you're looking for places to get involved. But yeah. All right. Podcast time. Let's do this thing, shall we? I like it. Today, we have another book review for you. We do one periodically. If you're not aware, we host a book club. We meet every other week on Zoom, and it is a super casual affair. I'd say about half the group doesn't read the book or maybe reads some of the book, and some people never buy the book, but we don't judge. So it all works out. It's totally cool. So, whether you've read the book or not, you can still come to the meetings and the conversation on the topics. They're always productive and forward moving. Even the people who haven't read, you can just tell that they're engaged and they're taking something away from it and they're hearing a different perspective and all that. So, it's just nice to come together and hear other thoughts and perspectives. It's a good time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We are definitely a chill book club. I am the one that in any other book club probably hasn't read. So I'm definitely not going to judge you for showing up and not having read either. People show up cooking dinner, nursing babies, in the car, to work or wherever. Truly, just about anything goes. But look, we are all busy and it's nice, right? Like it's just nice to get together and hear how other people interpret a topic or the way they're handling specific
Mhm.
issues or circumstances. Our most recent read was this classic parenting book. We're going to talk about it here in just a little bit. It's been around for like a gazillion years. Okay, maybe that's an exaggeration, but it has been out for a long time. Okay. Yet somehow neither one of us had ever read it or any of the ones in this whole line of books that they have. It is called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk by Adele Faber and Elaine Maslish.
Yeah, I had never read it, so I'm always excited. I'll jump in. It did get off to a bit of a rocky start, but from my perspective, it definitely still had some solid points. And as it went on, it got better. So I'm excited to dig in today. But first, we begin all of our episodes with a weekly recap. Just some highs and some lows of what's been going on in our homeschool lives or otherwise. It's part of our messy and imperfect vibe that we told you about at the top of the episode. So, how's your week been, Amanda?
Yeah, I have just been really busy. We are back in Southern California from lots of travel and different things that were going on, spending time with family. So we are mostly planning a slower summer, but I have got tons of specialist medical appointments right now and way too much work to actually slow down or take it easy. Maybe by the end of June. That's my goal. By the end of June, things can slow down. We'll see how that goes. But hopefully, by the time you are listening to this, I have managed to get the June newsletter out to all of our followers over on Patreon. And I have been brainstorming for our next few Homeschool Moms Unfiltered unit studies that we put out. Megan came up with this idea of doing an America 250 themed unit study for June, which we did. We got it done. We got it out. It turned out great. It's that thing like the American experiment was really forward thinking in a lot of ways, but it's not that simple. It's not that clear cut, no matter what Turning Point and PragerU might want you to believe with all of their America 250 and Freedom 250 crap that's going on out there. So anyway, we decided to do this, but I was like, I feel like maybe we should turn this into a whole series of unit studies specifically about American history, where it's not totally whitewashed and they really encourage critical thinking instead of just memorizing random facts that you're never going to actually need in real life unless you happen to be a high school American history teacher or some such thing. So yeah, I'm pretty sure they're going to be awesome because there's a ton of need for it, but also I definitely do not need any more big creative projects on my plate right now. So that's exciting. Like I'm pulling a Megan. I'm gonna start calling it a Megan when I'm like, I'm super tired, I'm super overwhelmed, but I have another great big project that I totally think we should do.
Yeah,
Usually
accurate.
that's your role. Yeah. But yeah, as far as homeschooling in general goes, this week we have just been taking it easy, seeing friends after being gone basically all of May. All of my kiddos' friends are officially on summer break. Even our homeschooling friends, they all take summers off. So it's a lot of play dates, a lot of driving and things like that. Though I am going to take just a moment for a quick brag and say that we wrapped up our official school year with news that my kiddo made National Junior Honor Society. So
Yeah.
it was not the easiest application process for him. If I had micromanaged a little bit more, things would have gone more smoothly and there wouldn't have been quite so much procrastination and last minute, like, oh my God, how do I get this done? But it was great practice. And that's what really matters. It's that thing. He needs to work on some different things. He needs some time management skills and project management skills. But in middle school, it doesn't really matter. I mean, yes, it's great and it's wonderful and all of that jazz, but it doesn't matter nearly the same way it will matter in high school for
Yeah.
college application process and stuff. So this was the time to to fail if he just didn't get it submitted in time or whatever else. But I think because he did it and it was pretty clear that he was doing it on his own, they were maybe a little bit more forgiving than they would be in high school with some of that. So I was really proud of the fact that he got it together and he just got the email letting him know and his teacher called to congratulate him and all of that kind of his oversight teacher. So that was all very exciting. So yeah,
That is exciting. Oh, that's so awesome for him.
yeah, fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I don't have too much to complain about. Things are they're moving along. There's nothing like, yeah. How about you? What do you got going on?
Oh, I mean, kind of the same. Busy, busy, busy. Our book comes out in just a couple of weeks. So it's been a little bit of a whirlwind of all the stuff that goes with launching a book, but all good things. Yeah. So the last time we recorded, I had talked about the fact that we were going to go to the beach the next day. It's been part of our getting Liam out more and desensitizing him to some of the things that he had lost sensitization to. And so, yeah, we got up, we went to the beach. It was going to be such an amazing day. And we were there a total of 3 minutes when I had somewhat of a medical emergency. So he has a service dog, but when we go to the beach, she's off leash and she's just a dog. She's not wearing any of her gear. She's not working. She's good. She'll still alert if he's in distress or anything. She will, doesn't matter what she's wearing. At that point, she's still going to do what she does. But she knows she just gets to run and play when she's like that. So I had thrown her ball once. She brought it back, dropped it down. She was laying down on the sand, like, oh, this is amazing. I love the beach. I bent down to pick up her ball. She jumped up because, hello, ball, greatest game ever invented. Whoever invented the game of fetch and ball, genius, according to Waffles. And she came up under my chin and hit me with her skull so hard under my chin that my vision went black for a little bit. I didn't pass out, but my vision went black and there was lot of pain. It was weird. It was one of those like it hurt like hell, but I also couldn't feel anything kind of
Mhm.
situations. And I was like, are all of my teeth still there? Like, I'm not sure. There was a lot of blood. I knew that it was dripping. It was pouring. I had to walk back up to our blanket, bent over with my head hanging down so that the blood could just pour out of my mouth. And I showed my daughter and she was like, "Oh, okay." But you know what? I swear these kids are just like, they're so good. She was like, "I'll go get you some ice." She was sitting there handing me tissues. My hands were covered in blood because initially when it happened, my hands went to
Yeah,
my mouth
instinct.
and it had dried there. And so she was washing my hand one at a time so I could still hold the ice and whatever. And she was good. And so, yeah, we ended up spending quite a bit of time at the beach because I was just kind of in wait and see if it would stop bleeding mode, which it didn't. Universal healthcare is amazing. Sorry, I hate to rub it in, but it is. So I went to the neighborhood health center. They wrote me a note that I needed to go to the emergency room and see a plastic surgeon, which I did. I arrived at the hospital at 5:15. Went and did the registration thing, went and sat down, went and did the triage thing, went and sat down, saw a plastic surgeon, had my lip sewn back together, and I was done at 6:30. It was an hour and 15 minutes and cost me nothing. So, whatever they tell you on the news about socialized medicine, it's not true. I'm sure there's instances, but it's not all bad. And it's better than me getting a $3,000 bill because my dog whacked me in the face with her big giant head. But yeah, but my daughter was so sweet. While I was at the emergency room, she bathed the dog because that's like step one when we get home from the beach. But then she made sure Liam had dinner. She even made him brownies. She made sure Liam was taken care of. These kids are freaking, I love them. They're so good. So all good things. Yeah. So, but it's been almost 2 weeks because our recording schedule got a little thrown off where we recorded the last one a little early and this one a little late because of Amanda's travel schedule. And I think the last of my stitches actually popped out. So I was very glad we didn't have to record the way I looked because no one would have wanted to watch that. It was really bad. So yeah, much better. So all good things. Yeah, what else? I painted another mural, which kind of muralish, which I swore I was retired from mural painting. But my son Aiden, if you follow our social media channels, you might know he teaches Pokemon on Outschool. And he has this little office area set up for himself upstairs. And we were talking about how to make it more lively. And so he's now got on the wall up there too, and Charmander and oh my gosh, who else? Mew and Squirtle and the other guy, the green guy, Bulbasaur. I was like, who are these people? But I had fun doing that. So that was kind of nice. But yeah, he's just playing Pokemon and living his best life. And then next week, 1 week from this moment, Liam and I are going to try a new chess club in town. Again, as part of the getting out more and desensitizing more. I found one that will allow players under 18 as long as they are accompanied by an adult. And so it's on Thursday nights. So next week we will be going and trying that. So it's just finding those resources. I feel like that's one of the biggest things about homeschooling is continuously looking for things to meet their needs, whether it's academic needs or social development or emotional growth or whatever it is. It's a lot, but we do it. So,
Yep.
yeah. All right. So,
Absolutely.
into our book for the week, How to Talk So Children Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk rolls right off the tongue. Super smooth name. I bet they workshopped that for a really long time. This has been an often discussed book in parenting circles for many years now, and there are quite a few spin-offs for teens, for younger kids, etc. But we, as Amanda said, haven't read any of them yet, so this is our first exposure to the world of Adele Faber and Elaine Maslish. As I mentioned a little bit ago, a little bit of a rocky start, I felt at least. I don't want to speak for Amanda, but I did still take some things away from the experience. I'll be keen to hear your overall thoughts as well today, Amanda.
I have to say, I find it funny that generally speaking, I'm the silver linings person in this partnership, but we totally switch roles when it comes to books.
Story. I'm always like, I can take something from any book. I'll read whatever and just take the nuggets that I like.
I'm like, don't waste your money or your time. It was bad. Just don't waste your money or your time. No. Anyway, all right. Before we jump in, we do want to tell you that our next book selection has been made. So the first meeting for the next book will be June 15th, 2026, if you are listening to this sometime in the future. But you can jump in whenever you would like. We would love for you to join us on the first day, but that is absolutely not necessary. We meet every other Monday. So 15th and then the very end of the month and on and on. You can figure it out. The information is also on our Patreon and on our social media. You can go look it up. Easy peasy, no problem. We have our actual book club on Patreon where we get together. Megan and I always read the book, even if we finish it like 2 minutes before book club starts. And some other people read and some don't, but we just talk through it. Seriously, feel free to come join. We would love to have you. We've got a great, nice little core group, but we can always have more people.
Mhm.
So yeah, come find us over on Patreon. We have a free way to sign up. There's like a membership level that's just totally free, and you get our newsletter and a few other little behind the scenes things. If you sign up for one of the different levels, there's various levels of Q&As and other behind the scenes things and all kinds of stuff. You absolutely should come check it out. But if you are listening when this drops or right around the time that it came out, we are doing a promotion for the summer of 2026. And we have this thing, it's called Level Up Your Community. So right now you can come and join a few meetings for totally free. So it doesn't matter what level you're at. If you're at the book club level and you want to come to some of the other lives, this is your opportunity. Details are going to be over in Patreon. If you're not in any of them, you're just a free member, this is also a great chance you can check out the book club. You can check out some of the others. You can figure out which level seems right for you. Yeah, just let us know. Details are, again, on social media, on Patreon, and you can always message us. All right, so then, without further ado, our next book, and I swear, Megan leaves me to announce the names of these things because she just loves sitting there and snickering at my ineptitude when it comes to pronouncing names. But anyway, the book is called The Yes Brain by Daniel Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson, I think. I hope. If
Looks that way.
not, I'm sorry. They're probably never going to listen to our homeschool podcast, so hopefully they won't know that I butchered their names. Okay, so according to the description, this book will explore how parents can nurture resilience, empathy, curiosity, and emotional flexibility in kids. It promises to offer practical tools for helping children move beyond reactive behaviors and build the skills needed to handle challenges, relationships, and everyday life with more confidence. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see if it can deliver. Those are some big promises. We'll see if it can deliver.
I'll take some nuggets away from it and I'll be happy. So I'll be good. In any book, even if I don't love it, there's tidbits I can find that make it meaningful for me. So I'm a happy camper. Yeah.
Yeah.
This one has good reviews online too. So my hopes are high. I'm going in with confidence that it's going to be good. All right. But how to talk so kids will listen and listen so kids will talk. Let's do this. Now, I referenced multiple times now that I felt like it got off to a rocky start, but it got a little bit better. Do you have any redeeming thoughts about the book, Amanda? Do you share that
Well,
philosophy at all?
I will agree that it got off to a rocky start. I'm not so positive that it didn't have a rocky middle and a rocky end, but I will say that doesn't mean that it wouldn't be helpful for some parents or caregivers, or maybe grandparent figures, whether they are official grandparents or honorary grandparents. I could see how this book might fill a need.
Mhm. Okay, so it didn't have an arc for you. Okay. It was interesting though, because when we were early in the book, I had lunch with some friends, and whenever we get together with this family, there's kind of this casual debrief of what everyone's reading. It's just kind of part of our dynamic. Her daughter is always an excellent source of fantasy books for my oldest kiddo, Aiden. Literally after the lunch, I sent him a bunch of screenshots that I had gathered while they were chatting. And he was like, this one, yes, this one, yes, this one, yes. So I just went ahead and ordered all of them so that he had them when he was ready. But one of the moms had said that she had the teen book from these authors and hadn't read it yet. It had been in her TBR pile. And I was kind of like, I'm not so sure that you need to bump that up in your TBR pile when we were early on in the book. Vibe of the book, for me, especially more so I felt at the beginning, is this message that when your kids are acting in age and developmentally appropriate ways, because they're kids and they do things, that you might consider talking to them about their actions or their feelings or their choices, how their choices impact the family unit as a whole, instead of smacking them around or telling them that they're stupid idiots. And I was like, this is the book. This is the advice. We needed a book for this. But there are multiple editions of this book. And I felt like as we got into later parts of the book, it seemed to modernize a touch. And there was slightly less of that perhaps as we progressed. Or I got numb. I'm not sure, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But for me, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I'm torn. When I was talking to my mom about the book, she was definitely like, yeah, it sounds like it would have been really good for our generation, raising kids in the 70s and 80s. And yeah, that's when it was originally written. So that makes sense. And I can absolutely see how it would still be good advice for people who are parenting in nearly identical ways to how their less progressive parents were parenting in the 70s and 80s. I guess my circle has just been cultivated the same way my social media algorithm has been. And I don't have a lot of these folks in my orbit anymore. And honestly, with what I do see on social media and hear other stories of, I have a really hard time believing that they would read this book and be like, oh, this makes a great point. When I know they are calling Mr. Rogers and Sesame Street too woke. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I raised my kids in the South, and I will definitely say I saw plenty in Target where it would be like, if you ask me for anything, you ain't getting nothing. When I was like, ah. But to your point, I'm not sure that that mom is buying this book. So, yeah. So, anyway, there's a ton of role play examples in the book and activities. And even the revised version that they're suggesting as the better than smacking your kids around and telling them that they're idiots, they're harsh. It was jarring for me because I can't ever imagine speaking to my kids so unkindly or disrespectfully. And that was the improved version that they were proposing. And so I was like, oh, okay. So maybe about a third of the way into the book, I did start wondering about the authors and their upbringing. They're a mother daughter team. They both have Jewish last names. Now, I'm married to a man whose grandparents were Holocaust survivors, which means his parents were raised by people who were doing their best to piece their lives back together and manage trauma. But most of the ways they were managing trauma was by ignoring it. That's kind of how that generation worked. I never met my husband's grandparents. But I did meet his grandfather's brother and his wife. They lived near us when we lived in Florida, and they were so lovely. But the aunt would be the first one to tell you that she didn't know how to play with her kids. She didn't know how to express love with her children. She didn't know how to devote time to her children. There was a disconnect, and she realized it very, very late in life, probably when she saw her kids parenting and were like, "Oh, that's a thing. Okay." So all of that trauma trickles down. And so when I was listening to this, I thought I was maybe hearing generational trauma in the communication style, one that I genuinely recognized from dealing with my in-laws. Like it's very present. So I Googled the authors and I found out that the mother, Adele Faber, of this mother-daughter team was born in 19 fucking 24. So yeah, no, she was not being raised by Holocaust survivors. She predated the freaking Holocaust. Her family didn't come from Europe on flee and all this kind of stuff. So, okay. So I was thinking maybe her worldview and her parenting philosophy and her communication style had all been shaped by that experience. But no, she's just old school and existed in a world where kids should be seen and not heard and didn't deserve respect. So if you read this, just be forewarned that there's a fair bit of that communication style in the book. And listen, Amanda brought up opportunities where it might be a helpful book. If all of that I just described sounds like a household that you grew up in and you're working your ass off to be a cycle breaker, first of all, good for you. You're doing amazing. But maybe there's a little bit more value in these activities and these role plays. I was born in the 80s, and my mom was kind of like a gentle parent of the 80s. Not to the degree that we have now, but she wasn't this book at all, nowhere close. She wasn't even the revised mean version. But if you didn't have that experience and you're trying to figure out, like Drew Barrymore has talked about that she didn't know how to parent because she never had parents that parented. So if you don't feel like you had a parent who showed you what it is to parent, then it might be more helpful, and no judgment, and good for you for picking it up and taking what nuggets you can from it.
And yeah, my parents were pretty open about how hard they were working to provide a better life for their kids than they had in all of the ways: socioeconomic, parenting, support, et cetera, et cetera. I definitely did not have the gentle parents of the 80s growing up. And a lot of the things in this book would have happened when I was a kid, and they are still happening in my extended family, which would be a big part of why I don't go back and see most of those extended family members. And I will say I am working very hard to do the same. So for me, I think part of the issue with this book is that I'm past this book on my continuum of parental self improvement.
Mm.
Like, I can absolutely see how lots of people aren't, especially those parenting younger kids when they're younger and it's your first time really dealing with the reality of being a parent. You're just starting out on your parenting self-improvement journey, that whole trial by fire nonsense. I could see that.
Mhm.
I will also agree with you that the book recommended a lot more passive aggressive communication than I'm comfortable with. That's really not my style. It's not my jam. Spent a lot of time in therapy unpacking that. Honestly, this book to me seems like it switches back and forth between talking to your kid in a way that is kind of condescending and treating them like a baby, and then being kind of shockingly rude and passive aggressive. I don't know. I just struggled with the delivery of the message
Mhm.
way more than I think I struggled with the actual message. And we'll talk about that
Mhm.
as we get into each chapter.
Mhm. So I will say I read the audiobooks because I don't live in the US and it's hard for me to get the physical books all the time. And so I never have page numbers to notate the way Amanda usually does, but I do have my notes. I did a much better job of keeping them in order this time than I did the last time. Where I just kind of like jotted stuff down in a notepad on my phone. So we've both got notes for chapter one, but I have no clue if your note is first or my note is first. So however you want to do this, I'm game.
Yeah. Well, I think I didn't actually do page numbers this time because I did a combination for me because of brain fog issues and stuff like that. I do a physical book and I do the audio book. The physical book I got is an older version.
Mm.
And then I got the most current version of the audiobook. It lined up shockingly well, which
Mm.
is probably another problem in my opinion as far as the book goes. As discussed, the book is like 40 some years old. I'm not sure that the most recent version should line up quite so well with however old my copy is. But in any event, we'll make it work. So chapter one was called Helping Children Deal with Their Feelings. My biggest takeaway there's like, what's wrong with asking a child directly, why do you feel that way? And their response was, it's much more helpful for an unhappy youngster to hear, I see something is making you sad, rather than to be interrogated with, what happened? Why do you feel that way? And I was like, this goes back to that thing. Maybe for younger kiddos, this gentle easing in of like, well, I see something's wrong, but I don't know. For me, like I'm trying to raise kids who are in touch with their feelings and emotions and able to identify them and address them. And
Mhm.
I'm just not too keen on this passive aggressive statement where you're like, I'm just going to passively aggressively ask you to share with me. And then, according to the authors, the kids are just like, oh, they didn't ask me directly. So I'm just going to open up and share the entire story.
Yeah. I'm like, all right. Yeah. I had a couple of notes from chapter one. It talked about the downside or the dangers of disregarding your kids' feelings if they say they're feeling sad or whatever. Again, I feel like a lot of this is emotional intelligence 101, but if you weren't raised this way, it might not be intuitive. So it might be helpful to have some of those activities. I know for myself, I had one example that wasn't necessarily about feelings, but it was more about physical sensation, where when my oldest was super young and I'd run the bathwater. And, when you take the hospital class and they tell you bathwater temperature ranges. And so to me, that was the truth. These are the ranges that you bathe in between this and this. And I wasn't measuring it with a laser thermometer or anything like that, but I knew the range generally. And he wanted really cold water. And I was like, you can't bathe in cold water. It was like, that's stupid old school. You'll get sick. We lived in Miami. Like, what's he going to get sick from? You know what I mean? It's not like he's going to freeze.
The measles
And
these days, but that's a whole other story.
yeah,
Probably not from the
exactly.
cold water, but who knows at this point? Like, are they even anyway, sorry.
And so finally one day, he's like, doesn't have a rude bone in his body. And one day he just looked at me kind of sharply and went, I feel temperature differently than you feel temperature. And I thought, like, how bold of me. It's not my bath. Why was I telling this kid that he needed a certain temperature when he's like, I don't like this temperature. I don't feel comfortable in this temperature. It's not what I want. And I'm like, but this is the appropriate bath temperature. So it's just like those things, like you said, when you're a young parent and you're figuring things out. And it was like, but this is the healthy range to bathe in.
Yeah.
According to who? He's fine. He's 18. He's fine. He still probably showers in cold water for all I know. Yeah. So that was that. There was an example in here about asking kids to draw their feelings, which I thought for younger kids, or maybe if this is very new, or if you have a kiddo who has maybe an auditory processing or dyspraxia or something like that, that could be a tool. It could be a cool tool that you might want to implement or at least try at some point in time. So I did like that part too. I thought you never know.
Yeah. Look at you and your nuggets.
Yep.
Okay, so chapter 2 is called Engaging Cooperation. Solid idea. All right, so Megan has more specifics about what is in the chapter, but I'll just give you the high level from their list. So their list says what not to do. No blaming and accusing, no name calling. And this was not like the occasional, like, what are you doing, you ninny? This was like, why are you such an idiot? Like, ouch, wow. No threats. Don't command them. Lecturing and moralizing, obviously don't lecture and moralize. Now, I will fully admit that I tend to do this, not the moralizing as much as the lecturing, but I definitely provide too much information. And my kiddo was pretty quick to point out, like, you do that sometimes. Sometimes there's a lot of information when you're trying to get a point across, and it kind of becomes an educational lecture. I'm like, yeah, that's fair. Warnings, no warnings. And a specific one they gave was, watch it, you'll burn yourself. And I was like, okay, this feels like pretty standard good parenting these days. Don't make martyrdom statements. If you're still doing that, therapy is an excellent thing. Go get yourself some therapy for both yourself and your kids. Comparisons. This is one of those things. We all know that you shouldn't compare your kid to other kids. It doesn't change the fact that even the best parents sometimes accidentally do it. Work on it, obviously. Don't use sarcasm. Now, this was one of those ones where their sarcasm was exceptionally rude and harsh. And so I think maybe that should be qualified with like humor and sarcasm, as long as that's a communication style in your family can be okay. But what is what it is. Prophecy was one not to use. And I thought this was interesting because I also apparently do this. My kiddo told me that I do this, where again, I think I'm explaining likely consequences of events and why those likely consequences matter. Their examples in the book were far more like, if you don't do this, then you'll never get into college and then you'll never amount to anything and you'll be living on the streets. And definitely not that kind of prophecy. Mine is more like, well, if you do this, then there's a very good chance that this is going to happen. And if that happens, then you're going to have to work extra hard to correct it to be able to do this. And my tween, almost teen at this point, doesn't really love that, which, tell me a teen that does. So I'm kind of like, yeah, whatever. Take that one with a grain of salt. So what to do as opposed to those things, describe, which again, kind of goes against that warnings thing and then what not to do kind of thing. Give information, describe, give information, say it with a word. This one in our book club, the discussion, we were all kind of like, first off, a lot of times that sounds pretty rude. And second off, it relies on pretty neurotypical wiring,
Hmm.
wiring. So definitely keep that in mind if you're reading this book or you're thinking about reading it. Some of this stuff is not the most neurodivergent friendly. The
Hmm.
next one is talk about your feelings. Again, not groundbreaking, sometimes easier said than done. And then
Hmm.
they also recommend writing a note. This is something we haven't done much of with our kiddo. I have definitely done it with my parenting partner, my life partner. Like, I cannot talk to you, but I think I can write it in a nicer way than what it'll be coming out of my mouth. So I guess I could see how that might work with a kid.
Yeah, I can't go for the sarcasm one, but I think too, sarcasm has to be part of your family culture in order for it to work. And also, I think it can't be mean spirited sarcasm. So in our house with sarcasm, it'll be things like, oh my gosh, if only somebody had forewarned that that might happen. And usually I had forewarned that thing. And so they'll just kind of roll their eyes and laugh and be like, fine, you were right. But yeah, but it's part of our culture and part of our language, the way we communicate. So it's never mean spirited ever.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And the kids can do it back to you.
Heck
And
yeah.
so, I mean, I think that's also at this time in the 70s and 80s, if you were using a lot of the mean spirited sarcasm, there was definitely this expectation that it trickled down, but it was
Mhm,
never used the other way as,
mhm.
establishing authority and things like that. So, worth keeping in mind if you're listening and thinking about how to implement some of these things.
That is true, yeah. I just thought it was interesting because there's tons of scenarios in the book where they do these parenting seminars, and it sounds like they were kind of like a 2-day seminar over a weekend or something where they'd have a class on Saturday and then a class on Sunday. And so much of the stuff was feedback from parents who were attending the seminars, like, so much. It felt like reading reviews on Goodreads sometimes. And tons of times the parents would try the techniques after one day of class, come back the next day and report these amazing results. But there was this one instance where that wasn't the case. This parent was all dejected and naysaying when he came back the next day, like, oh, I tried it and it didn't work and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, wow. So you've been speaking to your child like they're a speck of dirt for years. And then last night, you decided to turn on a dime and be kind and considerate to your child. And your kiddo, who either didn't know you were attending the seminar or didn't know what the seminar was about, and they didn't know what you were attempting, and probably thought her usually assholey parent who speaks to her like she's lower than a speck of dirt had been taken over by aliens because all of a sudden you're being nice. You did this 180 and your kid had whiplash and your kid didn't immediately jump on board with this change and bare their heart and soul and acquiesce and respond in kind, and you're surprised about that. I was more surprised about the number of people who reported that it did work that
Yeah.
quickly, because I'll give an example. When my youngest was small, we had a little bit of a biting phase, and he was a sensory seeker, an extreme sensory seeker. And so he would always run up and hug me and all this kind of stuff. And one day he came up and he gave me a hug, but his head was just below my hip on my thigh, kind of that height at that point. And he bit me so hard that when I looked at my skin, you could see upper and lower jaw marks on my skin. He didn't pierce the skin, but he left a mark all right. And when I tell you, I would flinch for a while when he would come running up to give me a big hug, and I would do a little flinch and a little like, oh my God, he's going to bite me, because it freaking hurt.
Yeah.
So, and that was after one time. So imagine you've been treating this kid so rudely and so poorly for so long. And then all of a sudden you're nice. I wouldn't trust that as a human being. I would think it was a ploy, or I would think it was at the very best case scenario minimum, temporary, where it's like, oh, they're just being nice this one time, but then they're gonna. So why would I join you on this journey if this is a one-off thing and then tomorrow you're going to tell me I'm an idiot again? Those
Yeah.
snappy patterns are really hard to break. And if that's how you've kind of trained your kid to communicate and to interact with you over the course of their entire life, I would expect it to take some time for that to break.
Yeah, that's it. Trust takes time. You don't just buy it and install it. especially when it's been broken. It takes a lot of time. It's true in adult relationships and it's true in kid relationships and absolutely true between adult and kid relationships.
Yeah.
No, be rocket science.
But part of this chapter was this simpler style of communication where instead of nagging and hounding and yelling and threatening and whatever else, it was just to be very short with what you needed. And it was rude. It was super rude. I felt like, right? Put it this way. If my husband spoke to me this way, I'd be like, go fuck yourself. Like, who are you talking to like that? There's no way I would take that sort of language from someone. Why would we do this to our kids? I can't even imagine. So there was an example like, oh, the kids are always leaving the light in the hallway on. And so instead of constantly asking for them to turn the light off, the mother finally would just go, light. And I was like, oh. Or there was one, they get a dog and the kid promises to walk the dog and then the kid's not walking the dog, classic story. And so the example was Billy, the dog. And I'm like, okay, maybe that was probably better than the threats and the name calling and whatever else that was happening before. But I feel like there's got to be something in between the original version of nasty and this rude passive aggressive version that's here. One of the suggestions that they made was just kind of blurting out into the air what you wish would happen for your kids to pick up on it. And so one of them was like, oh, it would be so nice if the dinner table was set right now. And I'm like, who are you talking to? Why don't you just say, hey, Billy, I'm almost done making dinner. Could you please set the table? Thanks. That would be a huge help. Like, hello, what's happening here? So yeah, the
Yeah.
communication was not for me.
This chapter is also the first time, I think, that they bring up the importance of being authentic, of letting your kid know if you're angry or frustrated, which I'm totally on board with. They also went with resentful, and I was like, oh, I feel a little less comfortable with being like, you are making me very resentful. Like, I don't, I don't.
They're going to hold on to that one for a while.
Yeah, that's different from angry or frustrated. But the thing is, if you're not authentic, then you're going to end up hitting your kid, according to the book. And it seemed like it was always just like, and then I hauled off and smacked him. Then I spanked them. And in our book club discussion, we were all kind of like, wow, that took a turn I wasn't really expecting. Ooh. But I will say, for me, this idea of being authentic and sharing, I do think that that's generally good modeling. The trying to hide and pretend like everything is fine when you're talking to your kiddos. I don't think that's good. It's to me, that's kind of like those adults who grow up and they're like, my parents never fought. And you're like, your
Mm.
parents are divorced. Of course they fucking fought, you moron. Like, and the describe what you feel thing, they give lots of examples. And I'm not crazy about a lot of their examples. They put them in this comic style in the book. But I will say that as a disabled adult with chronic illness, who is the primary parent in our home, this is really important for us. I will absolutely wake up some days and I'll just feel awful. Maybe it's a really high pain day, or maybe I'm just super grumpy and crabby, or my head is killing me, whatever it is. It's not uncommon for me to say something like, look, I'm having a really bad day. So you should definitely avoid me if at all possible. If there's something you really need, if it's something urgent or something only I have the answer to, I'm happy to help you. But you need to know that today is not a day for deep philosophical questions. It's not the day to ask me to make your favorite food. It's just a really bad day.
Mhm.
And the first couple of times I did it, my husband was like, well, what is that about? And I'm like, I could not forewarn you. And then I blow up and we're all in a shit mood because I just couldn't handle it. Or I can tell you where I'm at, and then everyone knows what's going on, and we have a much better chance at having a nice, smooth, easy day. It matters, especially for us, because, like I said, I have chronic illness, and I do have more of those kinds of days than the average person. But I think that that's something our generation, especially, needs to be better about, is like accepting and acknowledging and describing when we're having a bad day or when I just don't have the bandwidth to help you right now. We try to be there and do all of the things for our family. And as perimenopause hits, especially, and you're marching towards menopause and you're just like, I don't give a shit anymore and I can't do that for you. And if you're just honest about it up front, everyone knows and no one is blindsided by the like,
Mhm.
not my problem today, kid. I'm
Mhm.
like,
Yeah.
whoa, it was your
Yeah.
problem yesterday. You took care of it yesterday. Why do you hate me today? So yeah.
Yeah. I can see that. I like that. I was very invested in what you were talking about, but if you're watching the video, I also had an eyelash end up in my eye while you were talking, and I didn't look terribly invested in what you were talking about. So I apologize, but I think it's out. So we're good. I can see again.
Nice.
Yeah. So, chapter 3, alternatives to punishment. So, it's interesting. I'm looking at your first note there. I actually thought one of the activities in here was pretty good. Let me look at my notes. You want to go first and just
Sure.
state your piece?
Well, I will just say I generally struggled with this chapter. The examples for me all came across as pretty brutal. The comic strip examples where they do like the back and forth. Again, alternatives to punishment. I don't disagree with the message, but the sharing of the message was not palatable. I will put it that way.
Mm,
So their alternatives to punishment include pointing out a way to be helpful, express strong disapproval. Again, sometimes that expressing of the strong disapproval was like, holy hell, Batman, without attacking character, which I mean, okay, state your expectations, show the child how to make amends. I do think that's an important one, right? And that they didn't get into it a lot with this book, but that idea of like, thank you for the apology, but I can't just let it go yet. I need more time, or I need this as well for me to be able to move on. I think that's an important piece because
mhm,
there are a lot of grown-ups these days who think that if they just say like, sorry, or even a more genuine sorry, that now it's supposed to be done.
mhm,
And in our home, I'm sure a lot of other people who are listening, we're working to really break those patterns and habits of like sweeping things under the rug because, well, now it's time to move on, even if we don't feel like it. So it gets pushed under the rug. Eventually, you got a big pile in the middle of the living room, and that doesn't actually work for anyone, right? Other things. So give a choice. I mean, choices, right? If you've got a toddler or you ever had a toddler, you know how valuable that is. And it works on husbands too. So I assume it works on everyone between toddlers and husbands. Take action and allow the child to experience the natural consequences of their actions. And we're pretty big fans of natural
mm.
consequences, sometimes
I
easier
mean,
said than done.
in list form, it doesn't sound terrible. It
Mhm.
was just all of the role plays and the examples were like, oof,
Ah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah. So when you're listening to that list, you're like, oh, what's wrong with that? Most of them on the surface, nothing. It was the way they communicated that was like, whoa, okay.
Yep.
I do have some nuggets from this chapter. One I thought was pretty cool, which was this idea of putting a whole bunch of solutions down on paper for a specific issue. So there was one where this one kid kept coming home from the baseball field, like just playing with his friends late, and he was late for dinner, and the mother was worried. And there was something in there about how he kept losing his watch, and that's part of the reason he was late. And she had already gotten it fixed once before, and whatever. So the suggestion was to put all of these solutions to the problem down on paper, and then everybody gets some vetoes as far as what they want to take off. So, like, one of the kids was like, well, I'll just come home late and you just won't worry. That's ideal. And the mom was like, yeah, except that's not going to work for me. And they ended up coming to stuff like, well, I could serve dinner 15 minutes later because it's summertime, which just felt so 80s Midwestern to me. Like, dinner is at 6. When she was like, I suppose I could stretch to 6:15. And it was this big thing. And we've never lived on a routine or a schedule like that. So I was just like, oh, big stretch there. But I get that for some people, that's very common. So yeah, they ended up coming to these kind of conclusions where he would communicate and do his best, and she would hold dinner and maybe put a plate in the microwave for him. And so I did think, as opposed to just kind of barking at one another and staying in your trenches on the opposite side and yelling what you want to do, it was at least a tool. I thought it was kind of an interesting approach.
Well, and I would say, I think it's great to model this kind of compromise. That is a life skill. I think our next episode actually is going to be about life skills, but like the
Mhm.
ability to actually compromise and sit down and look at like, well, in my ideal world, I would want this. And in your ideal world, you would want this. And where are we going to find middle ground that we both can see? It's not exactly what I wanted, but it's also not exactly what you wanted, but we can both make it work. That is such an important skill that I don't know if social media is anything to go by. I would say more than 50% of the American population has no idea how to fucking do that. So
Yeah.
I'm, yeah, again, it's that thing. Good. They have some good. The message is not the problem. It's the way the message was shared.
Hmm. Yeah. So to your point, then there's a bunch of stuff in this chapter about not spanking your kids. Okay. So, but to your point earlier, the people who are spanking their kids right now would be like, listen to this woke bullshit. And the optimist in me was thinking like, well, maybe those people would look at the age of the author and be like, oh, it's not just this like modern libtard woke crap. Maybe I should actually listen to this. But then the pessimistic side of me, who's lived in America in this hellscape for the last 15-ish years, was like, no, they would just point out that this woke stuff started back then and it was a slippery slope. And if we had stopped it back then, it wouldn't be happening. It wouldn't be taking over society today. So I'm like, I don't think the message is going to do what anybody really needs or wants it to do. But yeah. So anyway, there was a thing in here about like problem solving when calm and also evaluating your kid's mood first. Oh, how many times I have had this conversation with my parenting partner. So yeah, I mean, as much as you're reading it and you're like, well, that makes all the sense in the world. That's so basic. Why is that even in a book? Well, I've had that conversation with a grown ass person many times and it still hasn't held. So sometimes the basics and a reminder of the basics are a good thing, which is always good too. It's harder to remember in the moment when you're like boiling to take a pause. So sometimes it's helpful. The other thing that was in this section was there were quite a few examples about kids not coming into parents' bedrooms at night. There was literally one where the parents put a yardstick across the door that said closed. And I was like, I don't know about that. I mean, I didn't do attachment parenting with my kids. Ironically, if I had to do it all over again, I'd probably have been more attached than I even was. But I don't understand this need for so much separation. If the kiddo feels like they need you at 3 o'clock in the morning, like, why would I not want my kids to come to me in that time frame? I still, especially if my kids are like a little off before bedtime or if like they've picked up a sniffle or something. I mean, they're teenagers. They literally fly around the world by themselves and travel and all this stuff. Before they go to bed, I will specifically say, if you need me in the night, you just come get me. Because I don't want them to think, oh, she's tired, she had a long day, or was busy, or she has that big meeting tomorrow, or whatever. I want them to know, no matter what, you can come get me in the middle of the night if the stuffiness gets worse and it's preventing you from being able to sleep or whatever. So, the yardstick thing in the book worked, quote unquote, and the kid didn't go in. But I'm like, if that kid is a pleaser or a rule follower, I have a very strong rule follower. That doesn't solve the yearning or the need or the emptiness or the support or the comfort that he was seeking. It just means that he's doing it to please us or keep us happy or be a rule follower. And I'm like, oh no, I can't. I mean, I have an insomniac. I have a raging insomniac. And so, like anyone else, a lot of my thoughts are going to be informed by experience. But I'm like, yes, come. If you need a back rub or you need comfort or you need to watch a movie, like, I don't care what it is, come. That's what I'm here for. That's my job. And I'll take a nap tomorrow. It'll be fine.
I think that that's one of the things. I'm an adult. I'm a grown ass adult. I just had my 46th birthday. I have traveled the world by myself. I have traveled with other people. I have been single and lived on my own in apartments. And there are times when I'm sick and I'm like, leave me alone. And there are times when I am sick or I hear some creepy sound and I'm just like, can I get a snuggle? Like, can
Yeah.
I, like, why are the expectations for our children so much higher than the expectations for ourselves? There are so many adults who never want to sleep alone. Why do we expect children to? And
Hmm.
now, listen, I too, it's partly informed by personal experience, but we had an entire class that we had to take when we were foster parents that was around this idea of trauma and nighttime sleep and how it's okay to embrace that and understand those differences and that sort of thing. Look, I get if you don't want the kid in your bed with you, especially on a consistent basis. I don't sleep well when my kid crawls in between the two of us. We definitely have morning snuggles and things like that that happen. And every once in a while with something, but generally speaking, if my kiddo is in a place where he's feeling the need to be closer, he is welcome to be closer, just not
Mhm.
in my bed, right? Like early in the pandemic, the world was crazy. The world was on fire. We did not know what was happening. And he was definitely feeling the stress, whether he understood or not. He got sent home from school, which he really liked, and we're locked down, and there's all this stuff going on. You better believe I pulled out the mattress from the crib that we were not currently using and put that sucker on the floor in our bedroom and was like, here you go. You need to sleep in here. You're welcome to sleep here. As he got a little older, I was like, maybe we don't make it quite so comfy so that you don't forever stay in my bedroom. There are adult activities I like to do after you're in your own bedroom. But he was still welcome. It was just maybe not quite so plush and comforting. Like, maybe if the floor is a little less comfortable, you will love that very expensive bed we just got you. But again, why different expectations for kids than for
Mhm.
adults? Yeah.
All right. So, chapter 4, encouraging autonomy. Again, on the surface, love the sound of it. I'm all about autonomy. So, yeah,
Yep.
they had a list of ways to encourage autonomy.
Hmm.
Do you want to share them, Amanda?
Sure. So we have let children make choices. Seems pretty good.
Huh?
Show respect for a child's struggle. Also, yeah. Don't ask too many questions. And really, this one is described as badgering, right? Like those rapid fire questions with no time for responses in between.
Mhm.
And they didn't like clarify it early enough. And I think that that's a really important distinction. Also, don't rush to answer questions. And yes, there's some truth to that, but also their examples seem like every conversation becomes a therapy session. Like, well, what do you think? So, a lot of kids are going to be like, I think I'd like you to answer the fucking question. So keep that in mind. Encourage children to use sources outside of the home. Again, this is one of those, yes, absolutely, right? Like if they don't want to brush their teeth or they don't want to floss, coming from the dentist is going to hold a lot more weight than coming from you using librarians and things like that. But then they have some examples in there that I was like, whoa, I'm not sure I'd send my kid off to someone else for that conversation. So, and then don't take hope away. So when they're like, I want to be this, you're not like, oh, well, I don't know how you ever thought you'd succeed in that field, but that's a waste of your time. I am
Yeah.
not a bad idea. Let's run with it. Maybe go a little further. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought it was interesting. They talked about the reasons that parents keep their kids dependent. And like you said, we're going to talk about life skills next week. So I have the feeling some of this will probably surface in there too. But it's usually faster just to do the thing than to work through it with the kid. Their failures hurt us as parents. To see your kids fail and be upset and be disappointed and all, it can hurt. It's hard, but it's a lesson they have to learn. We might think that their failures reflect poorly on us. I know you live in SoCal. I lived in South Florida. Both are very being seen and what people think. They're very intense environments as far as the projecting of an image and all of that. So it's like, what do you mean your kid is in an honors class? Or that it reflects poorly on you as a parent that your child hasn't succeeded in this way. And for some people that we like being needed, I was saying before about my sensory seeker, he's not a sensory seeker anymore. And it was a lot. I'm not going to lie, it was a lot. But like we went so far to the other extreme that I miss the snuggles. So yeah, I get that. And then I liked the don't pepper kids with questions thing. I have an agreement with my oldest, who is the quietest, most introverted human being you will ever come across in your life. Also the funniest when the mood strikes, but generally speaking, his general demeanor is quiet. And if I did that to him, oh my gosh, he would never talk to me again. So we have a deal that when he goes on a big trip, like he goes to camp for a month or he goes on an unschool adventures trip for 6 weeks or something like that, when he gets back, he has a few days where he just gets to sleep and be quiet and he doesn't have to talk to anybody. But a few days after that, we'll go out for lunch and I get 5 questions. So I have to really come up with good questions that are broad and uncover as much as humanly possible, but I get 5 questions. And so that's our agreement and it works pretty well. He doesn't love the 5 questions, but it gives me some insight into what he's been doing for the last 6 weeks. Cause usually when he travels, I never hear from him or I'll hear from him like once in a blue moon. So it gives me just a little scoop. So
Yeah.
yeah, I took some nuggets. So, okay. Chapter 5 is about praise. We will get to that momentarily. We have plenty more to say about this bit of a doozy of a book. But first, we wanted to toss out a quick reminder that we are so much more than a podcast. So if you just found us because you were searching about this book and it popped up, okay, the podcast was the original plan, but it has grown a lot. Homeschool Moms Unfiltered is now an entire universe of resources and support when it comes to education, child rearing, homeschooling, etc. We offer online courses with workbooks to help you outline your homeschool journey, choose curriculum, understand developmental expectations. We have a book available for pre-order that comes out on June 23rd. If you order it through our website between now and then, if you happen to catch this, we will send you your very own signed copy. We host live meetings offering support and community for secular and progressive homeschoolers. If you'd like something more personal and focused, we offer individual coaching sessions with one of us, both of us, whatever works for you, works for us. That way we can really focus in on what your questions are specific to you, your family, your kid, all that good kind of stuff. We create super robust and incredible, if I do say so myself, unit studies. Our most recent one that Amanda was talking about earlier is our America 250 Promises, Progress, and Contradictions. It is a much more honest look at the founding fathers and some of the things they promised and maybe how they didn't really pan out the way they promised them. In a time where Turning Point USA is cranking out, America is the greatest country on earth and can do no wrong resources, our unit study actually acknowledges how incredible the American experiment truly was, but then also spends a lot of time exploring the contradictions between what they wrote and what actually happened. It includes constitutional rewrites, simulations, role plays, creative projects, tons of critical thinking all around the founding of America. So yeah, there's a lot in there. So check out the show notes. If you end up at our website, homeschoolmomsunfiltered.com, you can also just Google Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. You'll end up at our website. And from there, there's a link to everything we offer that you can take your roadmap and go in whatever direction you want to go. So yeah. But back to our book, chapter 5, Praise.
Yeah. Again, for me, this chapter goes back to one of our recent books that we talked about how self-esteem is really important for a bunch of reasons, but self-esteem in and of itself can't actually fix all of those problems. And that's literally based on research. Self-esteem is a really interesting thing. And most of the research around self-esteem happened after this book was initially published. And I feel like it just didn't really get the rewrite that it needed. So yeah, the examples, I was kind of like, okay, so not me, not my style, doesn't work for me. But some of the peeps in book club were definitely like, oh yeah, I would think that way, or I would feel that way. I'm wired in a way that this hit home for me, which was one of the nice things about book club for me, because I'm reading them. I'm like, this would never cross my mind to respond in this way. And I can't imagine anyone in my family responding this way. And to have other people, in this case, a few other women who I really respect and I think are amazing women, be like, oh yeah, nope, that would be exactly how I would think. It was a good reality check for me to be like, okay, just because my family isn't like this is still applicable. So yeah, in this case, this is one of those examples where having the discussion in book club was really helpful for me.
Yeah. There was a scenario in the section that I didn't love where a kid asks his mother if she would come to school with him and help talk to a teacher who'd been giving him a hard time. And I think if I remember correctly, basically bullying the kid. And he explains to the mother what he's already done to this point to try to mitigate the problem himself and has not had success. And the mom was like, you've got this. You can do this. And I just felt like he's already tried to the extent that he as a child can try, especially in that time frame too, where kids were not being heard and respected in the same way that they are a bit more now today. And he's asking for your help. Why would you not help? So I feel like if you are someone who's looking at this book as a parenting manual and thinking like, oh no, I'll just send my kid back out there to continue to get bullied and they'll be fine. They'll figure it out on their own. And it was funny because I was thinking, am I over parenting? Am I coddling? And so I brought it to book club, to your point, and every single person was like, yeah, no, the mom needed to step in. I was like, okay, I'm good. It's just a nice gut check for yourself. Like, am I helicoptering?
Am I the problem? Is it
right? Yeah, exactly.
Me, I'm the problem. Like, oh,
yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Actually, okay. Yep.
So that's where having that group consensus can be helpful too sometimes, because you're like, I don't know, but no, I was okay.
All right. So that brings us to chapter 6, freeing children from playing roles. And I feel like I say this about every chapter, Message good, messaging bad. So, the way that they say we're going to free children from playing roles, look for opportunities to show the child a new picture of him or herself. Makes sense. Put children in situations where they can see themselves differently. Set them up to be able to see that they aren't whatever they are believing. Okay, that also makes sense. Let children overhear you say something positive about them. This is not necessarily something I need to do in my own home, but in book club, some of the families have kids who are extra sensitive to praise. They don't accept it very well or they don't receive it very well. And so, implementing this and giving this a try, a lot of them had found that quite useful. And the opposite is obviously true. Like if you're sitting around bad mouthing your kid and they overhear it, that's going to be bad. So, of course, if they hear you talking positively about them, that's going to be a good thing. Model behavior you'd like to see. We talk all the time, like we're big fans of modeling behavior and scaffolding and all of that kind of stuff here on the podcast. So that one hits home. Be a storehouse for your child's special moments. Again, didn't love the examples, but definitely agree with the idea. And then last, when your child acts according to an old label, state your feelings and or your expectations.
Hmm.
Yeah. Again, didn't love the examples, but the idea is solid.
Well, so for example, one of them was the role of the crybaby. Like if your child is a crybaby, point out times that they're brave. And I was just thinking like, oh my gosh, I can't even fathom that mentality, because if you're thinking that and feeling that way about your child, they know it, whether you verbalized it or not. A lot of the people in this book, I think, would have verbalized it. But even if you're not verbalizing it, they're still getting that vibe from you. They're so intuitive and they're so smart. And so I was just like, oh my gosh. But then it's that thing where when you get labeled the studious one or the flighty one or the lazy one, whatever it is. And so it was super interesting because I have had two of those examples. One was my Latin teacher in high school, Miss O'Rourke, ugh, who just perpetually berated me in Latin for sucking at Latin. And I did suck at Latin. I own it. It didn't make any sense. It still doesn't make sense. I don't get it. Well, now here we are. We live in freaking Portugal. And I'm like, oh my God, I had to learn Portuguese and I have to do better with learning Portuguese. But I have this thing in my head that's like, I cannot learn languages. And she's long gone now. And I'm like, you hear that? You fucked me up for life. Thanks a lot. I wrote about her in our book too, actually, because I also had her for history. She's the one that threatened to throw a book at my head.
She sounds like a
So
really nice old lady.
she was a gem. So, yeah. And then, super interestingly, I had a teacher when I was in first or second grade, and I was at parent teacher conference with my parents. It was a thing where we all were there together. And she told my parents that I'm not creative and I can't draw. And my whole life, I was like, well, I'm creative and I do art things. I sew and I decorate cakes and I do this and I do that, but I can't draw. I can't draw. And I'm still not an amazing drawer. Is that a word? But I painted the mural in the living room a couple of months ago and I was like, can I really do this? I'm 45 years old. I was like, can I paint a mural? And sure as shit, it turns out I could totally paint a mural. And my whole life, I've been like, I can't, there's no way I could paint, I can draw. So when people plant those things, they stick. And
Yeah.
we should not plant those things.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yep. All right. So that brings us to chapter 7, putting it all together. And they lead off with an example about this little girl who's a princess, is how they describe her, which again is one of those self-fulfilling prophecies describing it like that. But she wants a notebook in a specific color and her mom can't get it. And the conversation is nutty. And then there's a better example of the conversation, which is almost as nutty. And
Mm-hmm.
I it's just the thing, like, just no. But for me, I'm like, this whole thing is an example of a family that needs a whole lot of therapy, not a book or a weekend workshop. That kid did not get there on their own, and they
Mm-mm.
all need to march themselves off to therapy and work on things. I'm a big fan of therapy. That is not a dig on anyone, but take yourself to therapy. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
End of my TED Talk.
Then we get into the afterword, which was long. We spent 2 weeks of book club on the afterword. We were like, what is coming in this afterword that it's this long? And this section was weird for me because It was a ton more feedback that felt like reviews on their courses and their techniques that you would read about on Goodreads or in an Amazon review. But then also there were some new ideas and some content that were being introduced. And the ambiguity of all of it just irked me because I was like, this is a really lengthy section of this book. And I would like you to give me an overview of what this is. Is this what we've learned since, or what we would change if we had it to do all over again? Like, I need you to tell me what's happening here because you're telling me a bunch of reviews and then throwing some new ideas at me. And what are we doing? It felt choppy. It just felt like it just kept dropping random information and segueing like an ADHD fever dream. And I was like, what is happening here? So I didn't love that section. There were two things that I took from it. One was talking about punishments with kids, and actually, they're both related to punishments with kids. So the first was they would start their lessons with these parents by saying, how did your parents punish you as kids? How did it work? And everybody was like, oh, they punished me and I just hated them for it. Or I just found better ways to sneak out. Or it didn't do anything. I was just home for 3 days and then I went out and did the same thing again. And I liked that idea because it was that concept of, well, you just told me that punishments don't work. So now I don't have to stand up here at the front of the room and convince you that punishments don't work. And I did think, just from a human psychology perspective, that that was a cool way to approach things. But I also thought for people who were trying to convince their parenting partner to homeschool and their parenting partner isn't on board, you could kind of do the same thing, right? Where it was like, talk to me about your school experience and talk to me about your friend. How many of those people are you still friends with, by the way? Those kinds of conversations. And then it's like, oh, you've just diffused that bomb on your own, right? So that was one. But then I thought it was really interesting because they're not pro punishment, which shocked me. Although, again, this is in the later, more modern half of the book, if you will. But I thought it was really interesting because it's like you deal with people all the time in your world, whether it's other parenting friends or coworkers, neighbors who you bump into or who you have to ask them to accept mail for you while you're gone. You cannot punish any of those people if they're rude or don't do what they say they're going to do. You have to find a different dynamic to engage with those people. And they talked about some proactive strategies to protect yourself from the negative ramifications of people like that who might not be a bonus in your circle or in your sphere. But then it was like, so why are we punishing kids? And how could we be more proactive with our kids to prevent that behavior, that activity, those actions in the first place? And then we're not even having this conversation. And so I did like that part quite a bit.
Yeah, I felt like it was a missed opportunity because they bring up punishment a lot, but it never felt like they really clearly said there's a difference between punishment and discipline. And I think most modern parenting books will talk about the fact that, yes, discipline is important. You're the parent, you're the grown up. There needs to be structure and boundaries, and that comes together with discipline and with natural consequences. But you can have those things without being punishment. And I just felt like it was a missed opportunity, even in the updated section, that they didn't really do a good job of helping highlight that or clearly define that. But,
Hmm.
it is what it is. So, yeah, you've listened to it. Maybe you're like, I want to see exactly what these people are talking about. Or maybe you're like, is the messaging really that bad? Are those comic strips in there really as bad as they're saying? By all means, pick it up. Almost every library has a copy. I'm telling you, I think I bought my secondhand used version for $2 or something. It is not hard to get your hands on this book. So feel free to check it out if you're interested.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right. So let's wrap up with a mantra. Books can change what we know, but community changes what we do with that knowledge. You don't have to figure out parenting or homeschooling alone.
Yeah. You don't. So come hang out with us in book club. It really is a good time. And if you don't read the book, we won't judge you. We promise. Yeah.
Yeah. You'll still get the gist of it. You'll still walk away with some great ideas and some new friends.
Yeah.
I'm always
Exactly.
down for new friends. Yep.
Oh, but in the meantime, friends, happy homeschooling.
Yeah. Have a great one.